Today, we're going to take a look at the Prairie Moon Nursery 2024 Winter Spring Catalog. And on the front, there is this nice nodding onion with a bee getting a snack on the front. This is not sponsored in any way, but there is a code on the front. Sprout. That's good until March 1st. So, let's take a look inside. So, one of the things that they have are these pre-planned garden kits that give some sample layouts for you if you have the right size. For example, this pollinator garden kit covers 75 to 100 square feet, and they'll have a little suggested planting layout. Obviously, you can lay it out any way you want. Let's just take a look at this kit. We got butterfly weed, lance leaf coreopsis, smooth blue aster, wild bergamot, royal catchfly, prairie dropseed, hairy beer tongue, purple coneflower, button blazing star, Anise hyssop, orange coneflower, and prairie alum root. So I've grown most of these in my yard. I'm still trying to get royal catchfly to go, but I'm not giving up on it. It's a pretty good kit if you don't know where to start. And we have the pollinator patch. It's a smaller kit. That one's got some hairy mountain mint in it. And mints have a tendency to spread. So if you have an area that needs to be filled out, it could be a good choice. And then the colossal. Pollinator garden. That is a big kit if you have the room for it. Different type of slender mountain mint in that one. Different type of blazing star or liatris. And purple prairie clover. That's a really great plant that's very hard to find. I went to a nursery that does sell some native pollinator type plants, and I asked about purple prairie clover, and they had absolutely no idea what I was talking about. So unless you have a really specialized area, that might be one you have to start from seed or plant. But if you find a store that sells that, you should try it. It's a really, really unique bloom, and I see bumblebees really like this one. See, you can do a mix and match, create your own custom tray, 38 plants, and you can do a lot of a couple plants, or you can get a bit of variety. And here are some of the options that you can put in there. They're all numbered. I feel like this could be, if you were taking a plant course, these would be all jumbled up and you would have to write in or just match which is which. I've been falling into this hobby pretty hard, so if you're similar, you probably know most of these. Some of the trickier ones are probably just those, the yellow ones. Those yellow composite flowers. I think if I were to do something like this, I would try to pick plants that haven't had much luck growing from seed. So, like 51 down here is the royal catchfly. And some of these are a bit easier to start from seed. Like 42 is obedient plant, and that I found is pretty reliable from seed. If you want a ton of just one plant, you can do that as well. I would love to be able to have the space to do something like that. Really mass, or have a whole little prairie that was some unique plants and then a similar, maybe ground cover or something running through all of it. It would look really good. Power packs for spring, summer, and fall. Yeah. If you're new to asters, the smooth blue aster is a really good one. I mean, all of these are really great picks because asters can spread, goldenrod can spread, but I've grown this from seed and it's done well for me. This is another good one from seed. And blue sage, I'm going to try to start that from a plant this year. It's such a, you don't really see a lot of that blue type of color super often. There's a little guide on germination codes. I think if you're ordering seeds now, a safe one would be the A code, which means you don't have to do anything other than planting it out in the spring. And in the right spot, it'll take off. And some, like seed code F, a little bit more time sensitive or time consuming because it's a double dormancy period, so it could take a couple years to see something pop up from that. There's tons of great videos online about how to artificially cold stratify your seeds if you're trying to do it in the fridge. And those ones are also great for winter sowing. If you've seen cutting a gallon jug in half and filling it with potting soil and starting your seeds that way. Again, there's tons of great resources of people doing that, and I feel that it works pretty well. Seed packet collections with some nice artwork on the front. These are good probably if you don't really know where to start. Like if you just have a wet area, you would get the rain garden collection. I really like rain garden plants because they're easy to keep happy. Just wet all the time, basically. Whereas a lot of other plants say they need really good drainage or, needs to dry completely between waterings. Rain garden is if you have a low spot in your yard. Like I have a low spot in between the houses, and swamp milkweed grows really, really well there. "2024 Plant Spotlight" on the sundial lupin. It sounds like they changed what they were calling the lupin that they carry to help make it easier for people to understand what they were getting. I frequently will use the common name as well, and the problem with that, though, is it can get a bit confusing if you don't know what exactly you're talking about. So, this sundial lupin is a host plant for the federally endangered Carner blue butterfly. Isn't that gorgeous? So, if you live in one of these green states, that means it's present in that state, and the different colors kind of show you where it's native. Could be a really good plant to try. And this year I'm also going to try to do more host plants. So I am starting some Pearly Everlasting as a winter sowing experiment. It's a host for the American Lady butterfly. And we do have those in my area, and I'm going to try to boost that population a little bit. Got lead plant up here. That's another great one. And then golden Alexanders that are host for the black swallowtail butterfly. And then tons of other host plants that are listed here. If you see a butterfly that you think is interesting, you should look up the corresponding plant and see if it's native in your area and give it a try. And you probably will start seeing more of that butterfly. I feel like it's really true. You plant it and they will come. They will find you. Milkweeds, the host plant for the monarch butterfly. And I mentioned the swamp milkweed, also commonly called rose milkweed, if you want to be a little bit more fancy. have a pretty good luck at attracting monarchs to lay eggs on my rose milkweed. It's a friendlier option in the garden. It only spreads by seeds, which are easy to pop off those seed pods before they open if you feel like you're getting too many. And then the common milkweed, this one will spread by rhizomes, which are underground roots. So you'll see if you have something like this that spreads through rhizomes, there'll be a root going under the ground, and then it'll pop up a new plant. And this can spread potentially aggressively, but look at the size of those leaves. That's some really good monarch caterpillar food right there, though. And then the meadow blazing star, it says the ultimate monarch magnet. And a lot of things online will say it's a magnet for this or that, but this one is true. I found these at a nursery when I was just getting into native plant gardening, and it was one of the first times, I think the first time I ever saw a monarch in my yard in person, and it came straight to this specific type of liatris. So if you just want to see monarchs and help them later in the season while they're migrating, this is a fantastic plant to get. And then we have some plants for birds. And I am in year 2 or 3 of growing compass plant from seed. And it's slow going, so if one of these plants is something that you're interested in, it's always a good idea to try to, get those seeds in the ground. And this needs a little bit of cold stratification, so if you could do it in the fridge or next fall, get those started, because they have a long taproot, which is basically a root that just goes straight into the ground, kind of like what dandelions do, and it helps them during drought situations. They can go deep and find that water. The Rusty Patch Power Pack. Got Culver's root, wild bergamot, purple giant hyssop. They have one other plant that I think is really good for hummingbirds is the cardinal flower, which is another red plant. And that is, for me, the ultimate hummingbird magnet. Some other pollinator favorites. We have nodding onion, which was on the cover. I've grown this from seed, and I'm also getting some more by bare root. These are kind of like a bulb that I'm going to try to plant and try to expand my nodding onions a bit. And then shrubby St. John's wort is a really good native shrub. There's not too many of those that you see. So if you're looking for something that's going to be more like a little bush, it could be a good candidate. And cup plant is a little similar to the compass plant that I mentioned earlier, but cup plant will spread a bit more aggressively than, compass plant's pretty slow to establish. So if you have an area where you want a tall, 6-foot tall plant that can spread like crazy, cup plant could be good. This is another great one for those wet areas that I mentioned. Great blue lobelia. Prairie classics for medium soil. Purple coneflower is probably one of the more common plants that you see from the native plants that you can get. And I'm also trying to mix it up a little bit and grow some of these. The pale purple coneflower, which has a little bit of a different bloom time. So if you want to extend the season that you see these, it's a good pairing. Classic tall grass prairie garden. I unfortunately have a HOA in my area, so couldn't get away with anything like that. Have to sneak in my small native plants where I can. Dry soil. The Tennessee coneflower, which is a pretty rare variety of coneflower that I mentioned in an earlier video that I did, highlighting some more unusual native plants. A lot of people really like prairie smoke, which is very, very interesting blooms. It's very wispy. And that would be something that would look really good if you had a bunch of them all together. Here we go, some of my favorites for wet soil. It's the cardinal flower that I mentioned earlier. These are great for getting hummingbirds in your yard. Buttonbush is another shrub. And then again, obedient plant. Very interesting type of blooms that when you move the blooms with your fingers, they will stay where you bend them, which is how it gets that name. It's part of the mint family, so it will also spread. But that can certainly be a good thing if you're trying to, have a wet area and you're trying to stop erosion or something. That'll spread it nicely. Shaded garden kits. Columbine, one of my favorite flowers. the red variety. Made in the shade. The shade can be another area, or the shaded area can be another tricky place to get plants to grow. So if you're in an area where the ground doesn't get much light and it's hard to grow things, this would be a great place to start. And some ferns and sedges. I'm growing some sweet Joe Pye weed that's in a little nook on the side of my house, and I can confirm that it does very well in that spot. Different types of prairie grasses. Little blue stem and prairie dropsy. Actually, all of these are pretty good for normal yards. They do have a little asterisk next to prairie dropseed. I'm not really sure how fast that one spreads though. And here's what I was talking about, those ground covers. And this one is also good for American lady butterflies. That would be a good one to just have all over in between your other plantings. And of course, strawberries are also famous for how they spread. Some shrubs and trees. I love the way that these moths and butterflies look. What an incredible color that is. Looks like sherbet. The rosy maple moth. And the Luna moth. Those are so cool. There's a little page that outlines the timing it takes to really get stuff established, especially when you're growing it from seed. It does require patience. If you have more money than time, you can always try the garden kits to help go a little faster, but it's a great way to cover a large area. And then after year 4, you can have this gorgeous ecosystem that you created from nothing. And here are some pre-mixed seeds. The pretty darn quick seed mix. Deer resistant. Bird bonanza. Take some of the guesswork out of some of these specific needs that you might have. the living fence jungle prairie seed. This is the one to get if I wanted to get in trouble with my HOA. But if you have a spot for something like this, I say go for it. Oh, here we go. This is specifically for what I was just describing. If you live in an area that has a HOA or nosy neighbors, the short and showy mix could be good. These, it keeps it short, showy for high-profile sites, complies with more conventional landscaping for curbside appeal. Yeah, I love that they're trying to do this to try to get more people who may not really have the flexibility to do whatever they want to try to still support pollinators. So that wraps up this Prairie Moon Nursery native plant catalog. I hope you all enjoyed looking through that. Maybe you have some ideas for what you want to try to add in your yard. So if you watched the whole video, thank you, and let me know if you're trying to grow any of these or any other native plants. What are you excited about? I feel like winter has just been dragging on forever. And I'm excited to transition over to spring and start seeing some green stuff popping up. So, until the next time, happy gardening.